African-American male, who many will consider to be successful, with navigating higher ed, got doctorates, vice president's title. I also know about the exceptions. We need more exceptions. I also, again, want to thank Ms. Grier for all the work from the staff to bring this on, bring it back after a couple of years hiatus because of the pandemic. I think we have some great. We even have some people coming back from other states here, which is always great. So we might be South Dakota staff to be recognized this year. What's great about it is that they came, they heard about it, but it is I'll call it the long background. Their new director of public affairs was going to that African conference in the past. Now he's working there and he's finished to go to the conference for one of these things. In the past, we have lots of support universities and colleges in the world. You may not know, but I work very hard to yell at them. People work for me for a long time and they can't. I'm proud of myself that it's right. It's hard to you notice I say it about every 2 seconds. In my memory as I go forward. So again, thank you. Enjoy the conference. They have great sessions for you to do. You've got thank you again.
So to kick things off further, I'd like to bring forth the woman that helped put all this together, Ms. Valencia Sarai Cosby, Director and Chair of African American Affairs and Chair of this Pan-African Conference.
Gabrielle Grier is an artist, visionary, facilitator, and participant of growth, perspective shifts, and intentional responses to social and political change. With a strong focus on the exploration, documentation, and claiming of cultural and historic identities, her work is filled with imagery, narrative, and the importance of using intergenerational voices. She is contemporary in the sense that she is ever evolving, while being conscious of what ancestry has taught us. She has spent 17 years partnering with schools, art spaces, and organizations to implement system change, which includes strategic vision, from programmatic development and organizational culture that keep the voices of people of color, voices of people an art and design creative hub, retail shop, and gallery. She holds a master's in education in youth development and leadership and a bachelor's of arts in fine arts and youth studies, both from the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. Please join me in welcoming my friend and close colleague, Gabrielle Grier.
wonder what it was like to be 2 in the context of that environment, or 4, and what parts of their development were blocked from dreaming or imagining, or what was the imagination like in the context of these environments. Waking up every day, what was play like? What was their relationship to play? What was their relationship to the land, to prairies, to grass? How was that contrasting or comparing to the reality of what it was like to imagine as a child during that environment and during these stages? And this continues to think about how the history of the United States has impacted the imagination. And I'm particularly and intentionally talking about children because I believe that's where it starts. And the spark of what it means to be connected to something that doesn't exist, the reality of things that are foreign and are not familiar. There are a ton of artists who've been thinking about the relationship of this for a super long time. One of them is a profound artist. His name is Woodrow Nash. His work is featured in New Orleans, and particularly at the Whitney Plantation. And he is a phenomenal ceramicist who thinks about capturing the emotions of children during enslavement and what it was like to live on a plantation. He has these very interesting sculptural pieces where he shows the body language and the chemistry that was circulating through these children through, hands by your side, hands in your pockets, looking down, thinking about what it was like to walk around in these spaces. And although this is, to me, an important marker about being able to capture and to interrogate what was happening for children during those spaces and during those times, my work has really led me to think about what is this in a contemporary sense, and what does this mean for children right now? So I'd like to talk about my sweet baby niece, Zion. She is 4 years old, and Zion is a force. That's all I'm gonna say. Auntie duties are gymnastics. We do a lot of gymnastics together, but also a ton of play and creating spaces and environments to spark that imagination. Zion loves a couple of things. Those things are blueberries and dinosaurs. And the reason why she loves blueberries is because she doesn't understand why they're not blue. And so she spends most of her time literally investigating and tearing the skin off of blueberries to understand why do they call them blue. Dinosaurs happen, I don't really know where and when she was introduced to dinosaurs, but she likes dinosaurs because they're the longest words that she knows. And so she likes to interrogate those letters. And the reason why I'm using these examples is to say her parents and our family have created an environment that provides her spaces to do some very simple acts of imagination. She gets to take her days peeling back the skin off of blueberries, and if it's hours that she's sitting with her hands purple, trying to understand why in the heck they are blue. And then dinosaurs, why are these the longest words that she knows, and why is that so important to her? She gets space in her life to do that. The other beautiful thing about Zion is that she has this environment where she loves reading. And so whether we're in car rides where, the sweet little hand on her cheek is this empathetic moment where she's sad about the fact that a dog, was trapped in a house and the owner couldn't get the dog, and she was like, oh my God, like that's her friend, we need to get the dog out of the house. Or if we're at the library and she's like, oh my gosh, you can just keep opening the book and there's like numbers and numbers and it just keeps going. What is this? This is reading? Or where she's at her grandma's house and she planted carrots for the first time last summer and had the opportunity to pick her first carrot, and she was like, I'm a rabbit. I'm not anything else, I'm a rabbit. Don't refer to me as Zion, my name is Rabbit. Or when we went to the zoo last summer, and she got really pensive in the face and got down low and had morphed completely into a lion and believed that she was a lion. And the context of this is to say that if we compare this back to those children during enslaved times, what was their relationship to those things, to the outdoor space? Zion has the freedom because there's an environment that creates this opportunity in her mind and in her body to cultivate the imagination into a belief system. She is truly believing in her mind that she is these things. She is a lion, she is a rabbit, and she is connected to these characters in the book. This captivation of imagination and dreaming is really simple. And it starts young, forming these concepts around what is the environment, what is the context, who are the people that are shaping and molding the spaces in which young people and Black people of all ages, because I believe development doesn't stop, and how we can reclaim those spaces for us to imagine as simply and as directly as I am. So I'd like to just take a moment to really think about this question. So why in the world does healing the imagination matter? I answered a couple of very quick and direct versions of that, which is to say, we know the history. The history is violent, the history is aggressive, the history is oppressive, the history is racist. And we have seen the impacts of what that means, not only for young people, but for all people. And I truly believe if we are creating an environment in our homes, in living rooms, or otherwise, that challenge us, but specifically Black people, to reclaim what it means to play and the importance of the imagination. Not in these really abstract ways. So we think about like, oh, what is the theory, of imagination? What is the essence of what it means to imagine? No, I literally mean like go roll in the dirt. And what happens in your brain when that happens? And in the context of my work, thinking about the spaces in which I occupy at Juxtaposition Arts, it's the same thing. You put a group of a 21-year-old and an 18-year-old and say, here are the supplies, figure it out. And what happens in that space where you are invited to reimagine, and if it is that your home life, your experiences just by being a human in the world are in contradiction with that level of brain exploration, it is imperative and critical that we reclaim those spaces so that healing can happen, and healing in the context of the imagination. So I'd like to just take some time to think about what does this look like for me. There was a lot of time to explore that during some really pivotal moments that happened in our national history for Black folks. That looks like me exploring the relationship between history and taking images to really just mess it up. What does it mean to think about African history, Black history, imagery, and reconfiguring it to tell a holistic story? What's happening in Flint, what happened in South Africa, what's happening, in Minnesota, though the contextual historical factors are different, it's all the same. And so being able to take in any way and fusing it to think about play and reimagining play.
Context of Gabrielle's presentation, and so we'd like to go back and have that conversation with the room. Thank you.
Shout out to organic opportunities for discussion. I know sometimes my experiences are like after someone speaks, you need like a good 11 to 15 seconds for someone to be like, do I have something to say? I don't know. So it's been about 7 minutes. So I'd like to invite us to have a discussion about a couple of clear terms. So thinking about joy, curiosity, the imagination, exploration, both from your child experiences, and then because we're in the context of an institution that is educational, what does that mean for us then to consider how does that show up in the classroom? Do you experience that as a student, where there are people inviting you to share those experiences in a raw and intentional way, where you walk away from the class like, man, wow, I am on fire. And if not, I think that's a conversation too. So I'm inviting our dear brother here, Jeremiah. Do you want to share a little bit about what you were saying about curiosity in your family?
Okay. So she brought up the own topic in her presentation. Basically, anything you didn't understand, it basically came down to the mind. And what we were talking about curiosity and how there is not enough curiosity, whether it's in education or whether it's in the workplace. Nobody is curious no more. Nobody uses their imagination. After a certain age, it's like our curiosity disappeared. And what she brought up, she brought an excellent example of her niece Zion. Zion imagined herself as a lion. Zion was curious of what a lion can be. She talked about dinosaurs. At a certain age, all of us at one point had toy dinosaurs. And we all wanted to know what was a dinosaur, how it reacted. I'm pretty sure all you have kids, some of you have kids, and that walk around pretending to be a dinosaur, be a monster. And that's the curiosity we was talking about. The mind isn't able to flow. And what I discovered, because of my background and because where I come from, which is the inner city of Miami, we didn't have that opportunity to have that curiosity. Me, I like Dr. Omar said, there are some exceptions. I've always been a curious person. I always ask questions. My granddad always told me, always ask. Never take nothing for a grain of salt. You know, because he believed everybody was lying to him. You know, everything's fake news nowadays. He'll tell you right now, I don't believe damn thing he's saying. So we just what we were saying. Right now, there's not enough curiosity, even in this institution right now. We go to class, and a lot of you have students that just sit there and sleep. Why? Because our curiosity is not brilliant. Our curiosity is not, up here. It's not being used. We don't have that opportunity to imagine. Because like I said before there, every great thing, even the smallest thing, started in the imagination. It started in the mind. And we probably don't even have that opportunity. And this goes for everybody, not just black, white. This is everybody. This is the whole institution of learning. You don't have that opportunity to actually think. We have these cell phones, we have the food we eat that, like, let me start right there. So I was just, before I go too fast and fall in the rabbit hole. sorry. So like we were saying, we were having a conversation, and I was sitting there and I was just thinking, she's talking about the mind, because that's where it all started. I like to tell my friends, we go on Barnes and Nobles and we go to Shields and we go get some cookies, because Shields got the cheapest cookie. You get 3 cookies for $1. They some good cookies now. But we'll walk past Barnes and Nobles, and I have a young black man. He'll walk past and he'll be like, all these stupid books. I'm like, you the reason they don't burn the books right now, because you can't even think, because everything that we need to know are in books, And I came back and I touched on that because he didn't have that ability to think. He don't have that curiosity to know what's in them books. Why not? Maybe how he was brought. Maybe he like myself. The only library we had was the school library. I didn't get my first time reading a full novel, reading a book from front to back. I had to say I'm very safe, but was in high school. I didn't even like reading books until now. Now I read books like Marcus Aurelius or Epictetus or Seneca, philosophy. But to touch on that, I'm going to get back to the point of the mind. The mind is just a powerful thing, and we should as an institution, as a culture, as a people, increase that ability for students to actually use their mind instead of being boxed. Because like I said, plenty of you students and faculty have students that just slump in there because their curiosity is not being stimulated, and that's something we touched on, That's a conversation we have.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Yeah.
So I just had a question for both of you, actually. Why do you guys think that we lose our curiosity as we get older then?
I'm gonna tell you a simple what I think. So how many times have you been told to go to school in the morning?
Almost every morning.
How many times have you been told to raise your hand before you speak?
I was raising my hand just now too, so it's installed.
It's installed, like you said. We lose that. I believe we lose that curiosity because we build a system where all of us are just robots. They tell us to do this, they tell us to do that, and then once we leave that place, once we leave that so from the ages from 3, I learned it's proven facts. This is not just BS. From about 3 to 12, a kid can learn up to 3 languages. From 3 to 12, because it's something about the mind. It's something, I don't know what, I'm not a neuroscientist, but it's something about the mind that allows that allows that kid to be curious, that allows that kid to use his imagination. When you're in the sandbox, how many times you've been in the sandbox and you built a castle and you pretend to be a king? That curiosity. And your question was, why do we think? I think we lose that curiosity because at a certain age, we're being told what to do instead of being told how to do things, or being told how to how to think for ourselves. They're telling us how to think. And I'm not saying you guys, but the school system is telling us how to think. So that's what I think. If we involve like more thinking exercise or just kids being able to actually develop their brain instead of being locked in a box.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I'm actually going to open it up because I have many things to say, but I'm curious about, Ken?
So I was going to say something as well, like some things that I've learned in my childhood were that 3 things kind of affect the child as they're growing up. That's their teachers, their peers, and their parents. Well, no, their environment, their peers, and their parents. And of course, you also have teachers as well. I know that, you know, as a teacher, as an aspiring teacher, I want to be that person that kind of, you know, shows them that the world is way different than what you want it to be or that you think it is. But outside of that classroom, we still have those children going back to their environment, their peers, and their parents. Some parents aren't there for their children. Some peers neglect their other peers. How do we close that gap and inspire as well as empower these children to think outside of their box when they're so, I guess, exposed to other means?
I don't know how to. I think that's a really good question. You're talking about the realism of the environments that young people grow up in that they can't control. It's out of their control. And you're actually speaking directly to what was the first part of my presentation, those little babies who grew up in enslavement. That environment was out of their control. And I think there is something about saying, no, you can't change the people that grow you. You kind of just get who you got. And then there's this opportunity to reimagine literally what are the kind of the relationships that you want to have. And I do think that's about exposure. I do think it's about demonstrating in realistic ways. So remember I was talking about not making imagination this abstract, like theoretical approach, but really saying, you can imagine, I wonder what happy relationships feels like. What does happy look like in my mind? What does love look like in my mind? What do I know it to be? And what is the thing that I desire? And how might the exploration of that in your mind, just imagining that, is there an, you know, we can go philosophical, an energetic, you know, field that draws you to people that have that thing that you're imagining? You can go spiritual or ancestral, that community we find each other, kinship is created, co-created. And then you can go literal, like I'm just gonna be out here trying to explore what it's like to be loving and like experience love and fail at it. And so I'm thinking there's like, I'm hearing some like pragmatic energy in your question around like, dang, we don't want kids out here thinking that they can become lions. And one thing that Ken did say that I wanna capture is he was like, well, like how far do we go with the literal? So if a child thinks they're a cat and then they wanna like have a litter box, like how far does the imagination go? And I do think that's the relationship between realism, the context of what it means to embody, you know, this other thing. And then what I was sharing with Ken is that my niece, when I ask her why she's a lion, why do you want to be a lion, Zion? She says, lions are powerful. They're protectors. They shield their family. They provide for their family. Do you remember when Simba was scared and he had a dream about his dad being there? His dad was protecting him even though he had died. That is what her imagination is doing when she's embodying a lion. She's embodying these characteristics of what she's imagining a lion to be, not literally being a lion.
Oh,
I'm with you. Seriously.
I'm just saying, like, in the same sense, where do we draw the line when we're empowering children to have that curiosity on things that they aren't sure where to go? Like, if this one kid wants to be a fireman, I can tell them all the ways and how they can be a fireman. I can tell them all of these things, but you know, I'm trying to put out the question that I want to, but yeah.
Does anyone, I know there are people in here who are thinking about this. You are educators. Where's the line? You got a kid that wants to be a fireman, you tell them how to be a fireman, but you're also trying to help them understand the reality that they might not be a fireman. How do you balance that?
Good morning, everyone. Well, I'm not an educator, but I'm just going to talk about what I've observed about kids and my own memory of being a kid. Some of these things, kids are just part of their development. So you can believe in Santa Claus when you're 3. It's an easy thing to believe in when you're 3. But then you're like 5, and you're like, wait a minute, he goes all over the world in one night? What? Suppose you don't have a chimney. You start to, that development moves kids along. So it's okay if they want to be a lion or want to take apart a blueberry. Help them do it. And then ask them, it's like, oh, why do you want to be a lion? Lions are powerful, so you want to be powerful. And I think that's what we have to do, is work with them in the stages they're in. Now, if a kid wants to be a firefighter, why do you want to be a firefighter? Oh, you want to help people. Well, that's nice. Take them to a firehouse. I mean, you know. And will they be a firefighter? Maybe not. Maybe they will. But I think kids need the freedom to dream, to imagine, to know that imagination is good. And then as we grow and we change and our imaginations change, that very necessary thing that we all need to live and to be human will grow with us. And so, you know, my 63-year-old imagination is not my 5-year-old imagination. It's not supposed to be, but that's fine. So, those are my thoughts.
Thank you.
Can I interject one more time, though? One more time, though. I understand that. I'm just trying to see what is another way we can keep that same curiosity within our adult stages as well. A little bit about me. I was in the military, and before I went into the military, I wanted to know, how can I be a leader? And as I was in the military, going through all of these stages and learning all of these different new things, in the end, I still never really encompassed what it was that could actually make leaders leaders. Other than, you know, sometimes you're placed in a position, or other times, like, you work real hard to get into them or whatnot, but at the same time, it doesn't really embody what a leader is. Someone who stands up for others when their voice is voiceless towards all the other voices. Just, in other words, what does it mean to be a leader, and how do I fill in that role, and where, you know, empowering myself and the others around me, how do I show that to other people who might be feeling the same way?
You just defined it to you. I mean, you just said speaking up for people, speaking up for the voiceless. For you, it sounds to me that that's your definition of leadership. Now, being in the military, I don't know if you were talking about achieving a certain rank or something of that nature, but it seemed to me, in your imagination, you define leadership for you. And I think that's very important for us to know. We can't just go by other people's definitions or society's definitions or a particular institution's definition. You have an idea of what it means to be a leader. And we have to encourage that imagination all throughout our lives, so that, you know, being a leader could be having a rank, could be having a title, could be having a certain job, or it could be doing what's important to you. So I think you still have an idea of what leadership is.
And Ken, your literal question is why. I did the whole speech this morning is to say that there's this hungry little, these childlike versions of ourselves, or adult versions of ourselves, who are like, man, that was not what I expected. How can I reimagine what it means to be a leader? You talked about wanting to be an English teacher. You want to travel around and you want to bring voice to the voiceless. Like you're literally also demonstrating the power of your mind working to imagine that.
You're basically checking off the requirements of what it is to be a leader by teaching us that.
It's a beautiful thing. This is a beautiful thing.
May I add something? I want to say the way to encourage ourselves to do whatever it is that we are imagining is to be around people doing those things. So for you to be in an environment where people are giving voice to the voiceless in an organization or in a group so that you can learn from each other and encourage each other, I think that's vital. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is maybe a shameless plug, but I just got here in December. I'm a new employee. I'm the assistant director for RSO's leadership and non-traditional students. And so these are the exact kind of conversations around leadership that we have at our Leadership U programs every Monday at 5 p.m. The next one is the 27th, and we're talking about specifically about leadership styles. So personal invitation, if you like that, what is a leader conversation, this is what the type of thing we want to dive into.
There you go, Ken. All right, so I want to open it up to one more question before we wrap up for this morning. So we talked a little bit about curiosity, the imagination, the mind. The second set of questions that I had was thinking about joy. And all of us have a variety of different ways that we define that. Like as soon as I said that, I thought about kids. But I'm curious for you, those that can say how, when you think about the combination of the imagination and dreaming and those sitting next to each other in relationship to joy, like does joy like encompass those things? Is it intersected? Does it sit along on the side and just like look over at imagination? Is there a relationship? Is there a kinship? How do you understand joy and imagination?
So going back to what you said about joy, imagination, I have a sibling who recently started doing therapy, and I would talk to them every now and then about like what they would discuss and everything. And they told me that their therapist said, or believes that we are our younger selves even today. We are every age we ever were all at once. So to reach that joy and that happiness and that creativity even, we have to also protect and satisfy our younger selves as well, because we're still like fighting for them. We are still them, we're still living for them. And I think that's, once I heard that from them, I really started thinking about it a lot more and started trying to dive into my younger self too and try and make my younger self happy with the things I'm doing today and make my younger self proud of what I'm doing today. And it kind of, I believe at least, unlocks a little bit more of that creativity, because we are more creative when we are younger at the end of the day. So I just think that's very important to keep in mind, and yeah.
I agree. Isn't it crazy that people think we can like fragment ourselves? Like you can just separate yourself. Like you just don't have a body, a mind, a nervous system that is working in conjunction to primarily keep you alive. But also to think about that. Like my 12-year-old self is chilling right here with me. I went through a horrible traumatic experience in a school when I was little. It ended up with selective mutism. For those that don't know what that means, it means I literally stopped talking for a long time. And so to even be standing here, totally comfortable, even saying that, shout out to therapy, but also to the reality that I have to remember that part of myself that still needs nurturing. There was a fragmented version of what the world, the safety of the world was to me because of that experience. And so I had to reimagine through healing, through process, through safe, secure, supportive relationships, all those great things, the power of my relationship to myself, and that everything didn't suck when I was 12, just that one sucky thing. That kind of sucked for a long time. But it didn't encompass all of those parts of my 12-year-old, little girl. I had beautiful things that were happening, but I couldn't remember because that cloud was so cloudy. So I agree that remembering that we can't fragment ourselves, not our minds, not our bodies, although sometimes that does happen through trauma or hardship, that our brain does that to protect ourselves, and that the both and. You get to be 22 and 12 and 5 and 18 and 4. All of those things are encompassing our full selves. I believe that. All right, it is 9:30. Thank y'all for entering into the organic discussion. Have a wonderful conference. I'm looking forward to chatting with y'all through the rest of the day. Take care.
Excuse me, everybody. So that was a wonderful first section. I hope y'all learned or got any type of inspiration for that. So that will conclude this first part of the Pan-African Conference. We'll be moving downstairs, I believe. I'll get you more information on that. Thank you. Feel free to get more food. I don't know if this is coming with us. So I'm playing. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be food there. Play some music.
What do you do with the camera? Oh. Not take down?